everyone, welcome back to my channel, Kay Reads and Crochets. Today I want to share with you my most anticipated reads of 2025. With the new year comes new releases as well as a new TBR. This is sort of going to serve as like a jumping off point for my reading goals. My last year's reading goal was 60 books and I did make that. This year I'm going to try to read 75 books. Some of the books on this list are duologies or series, some that are brand new, some that I started in 2024. This video might be half of the books I read this year, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I am notoriously a mood reader, and so I usually have trouble sticking faithfully to a TBR, but I'm hoping that this list gives me a good place to start. There are some new releases for this year. There's a few series that I want to finish up. There are some series on here that are recommendations from my friends on Bookstagram and Book Talk, and I'm really excited. So let's get right into it. Oathbound is the third book in the Legendborn cycle by Tracy Deonn. It's coming out on March 4th. I already have the pre-order from Barnes & Noble, and I don't think it's going to match my other two that I have. I think this one's going to be a hardcover, so all of my books are going to be totally mismatched, but I'm okay with that because I'm so excited for this series. We follow Bree, who is a young Black woman who is going to sort of an accelerated high school program at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. While she's there, she gets involved in this magical secret society all centered around Arthurian legend. I have been looking forward to this book for literally years. I finished book 2, which is Bloodmarked, while I was on a plane back from my honeymoon in July of 2023. I just remember sitting on that plane, reading the last couple chapters and like wanting to cry, but feeling like I couldn't cry because I was on a plane with a whole bunch of people and I had no one to talk to about this. This is this book series that if I see it on your bookshelf, I automatically trust you, I automatically follow you, we're best friends. I love this series and I'm so excited that other people are getting really excited about it. I cannot wait to see where this series goes next. Oathbound is book 3 and there is going to be a book 4. And also the TV adaptation rights for Legendborn were acquired in 2022. So hopefully we get to see something coming out of that and we get to see a lot more of the Legendborn cycle in the future. This one is kind of cheating a little bit because we don't know if this is going to be a 2025 release, but I'm crossing all of my fingers that we get some sort of announcement soon. The Kindred's Curse saga follows DM Bellator, who is a mortal healer living in Lumnos. She has been forbidden by her mother to work for or with the Descended, which are basically this series version of the Fae. When her mother, who is also a healer, disappears, DM takes her place working in the Descended Palace as their healer. She wants to kind of exploit these new connections into getting more answers about her mother's disappearance. I have been obsessed with this series by Penn Cole, and the final book is Burn of the Everflame. It was supposed to be released in summer of 2024, but it kept getting pushed back, and we haven't really had any updates since then, but we've gotten a lot of really exciting news for the other books in the series. When I tell you this series has bewitched me, body and soul, call me Mr. Darcy. I am obsessed. I love the characters. Penn Cole has built this beautiful and intriguing world of Amarion and the Nine Realms. The world building is phenomenal. This series has put me through the emotional ringer more times than I'd like to admit. I did cry. The traditional published Spark of the Everflame came out in October of 2024. Glow was traditionally published in December, and we recently got an announcement that Heat will be traditionally published, I believe, in March. So I'm hoping that all of this hype for the Kindred's Curse saga means that we will be getting a Burn release date soon. And rest assured, if Burn of the Everflame is released in 2025, I will be the first one to read it. Like, give it to me, Rachel. Celestial Monsters is the sequel to the Sunbearer Trials by Aidan Thomas. This series was pitched as like a Percy Jackson meets Hunger Games meets Aztec mythology, and it was really such a wild ride. I read Sunbearer Trials in March of 2024 while I was at a 24-hour readathon with my friends, finished the book, put it down, and I stared at the wall for like legitimately 90 seconds, just processing what had happened in the last chapter because wow. My friends like looked at me and they were like, are you good? And I said, no, I'm not good. At that point, Celestial Monsters had not been released yet, so I just kind of had to like sit with all of these emotions. I loved the first book in this series because it was action-packed. There were lots of really compelling and diverse characters, and honestly, it was just really fun. It took me a minute to get invested. Once the actual competition within the series got started, I was hooked. And I'm super excited to see where the series goes from here. This is a series that I have been working on for a while. I read them out of order by mistake. I started with Yours Truly, and then I read Just for the Summer, one of the coolest covers of the year, by the way. Part of Your World is actually the first book in the series, and I didn't feel like I was missing a whole lot of information by not reading it first, but there were definitely characters that I was not familiar with. However, when I got to Just for the Summer, there was a lot of information that I was missing. There were so many overlapping characters and character arcs that I don't think hit for me as emotionally as they were supposed to, because I was missing the background information that I would have gotten by reading Part of Your World. Part of Your World has been out for a while now, and it sets up like the small town vibes that people really love about this series, but I've got plenty of time to read that before Say You'll Remember Me comes out. Abby Jimenez has quickly become one of my auto-buy authors. I love how she blends humor and heart. She's honestly one of the funniest authors on TikTok. If you don't follow her, you are missing out on so much. I was reading this book while I was on a cruise. I feel like I looked like a maniac out on the pool deck reading this book because it was so funny. And her TikTok is exactly the same way. The Dance of Thieves duology by Mary E. Pearson was one of the first book talk books that really got me back into reading. I loved the characters, I loved the world, but there were moments when I was like, I'm missing something here. Like, there is information that I do not have. It was about halfway through reading this series that I realized that it was a spin-off duology of this series. This is the Remnant Chronicles and the prequel Morrigan. I have been so excited about this world, but honestly, I've been a little intimidated to dive back into it. I loved Dance of Thieves. I did not enjoy Vow of Thieves, the second book, as much. I've been kind of worried that the Remnant Chronicles may not live up to the hype that I've got going on in my own head. I think my plan is when I decide to go back and read these books, I'm just gonna go through the whole series. I don't know if I should start with Morrigan or if I should start with the Remnant Chronicles proper, but then I'm just gonna go through and read it all. Once Smitten, Twice Shy is the third book in the Wilmot Sisters series by Chloe Leese. All three of these books are Shakespeare retellings following the girls in the Wilmot family. Once Smitten, Twice Shy, even though the main character's name is Juliet, is not a Romeo and Juliet retelling. It is a Twelfth Night retelling. If you like retellings with neurodivergent protagonists specifically, this is a series for you. Chloe Leese writes such genuine characters, and I truly connect with all of her female leads. She's got another series about the Bergmans that I haven't started. I have 2 of the books, but it's like 8 books long, which is a little intimidating. I definitely am interested in trying it in the future though. Chloe Leese is definitely an author that I recommend to any romance fan. Once Smitten, Twice Shy comes out early January, so I will definitely be picking it up soon and getting started on it. This is a series that I somehow missed reading as a young adult, but when I found it, I completely understood the hype. If I had read Percy Jackson as a kid, I would be a menace to society, and I would probably have like 3 Percy Jackson tattoos. I just know. I feel it in my spirit. I read the first series, which is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, when I started getting back into reading, and I completely devoured the series. So far, I've only read the first 2 books in the Heroes of Olympus series, but I do have all 5 of them. In general, this series has been going way slower for me, and I think that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, this series is way bulkier than the first series. Also, might be a hot take. I don't care for Jason as much as I care for Percy. Percy literally does not appear in the first book of this series at all. The series is called Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus, and we don't see Percy Jackson for the entire first book. I knew that going into it, but like, I missed him. I missed Percy. I really liked the rest of the characters that we met in the second book, which is Son of Neptune. If anything happens to Hazel or Frank, I will cry. I can't explain to you why. I have a bad feeling that something is going to happen to one or both of them or their relationship, and I know I'm gonna be emotionally devastated by it. I started reading Mark of Athena. I think I got like 50 pages in, but I'm really excited about this one because I love Annabeth. She's my favorite. I'm hoping that once I really get into this book and get into like the meat and potatoes of it, it's gonna get me out of my Percy Jackson slump and I'll be able to finish the series this year. Ace of Spades is a thriller, mystery, YA novel that feels like Gossip Girl meets dark academia. Chiamaka and Devin are the only 2 Black students at an elite private school. After a mysterious series of text message exposes parts of their lives that they'd rather keep personal, they begin tracking down the person behind this account, who is only known as Aces. I've been into a lot of mysteries and thrillers recently, so I've got high hopes for this. This is another series that I missed as a kid, as a young adult, but I feel like I would have absolutely loved it. Scythe is set in a futuristic society where mortality is essentially eradicated. Like, people don't die on their own. So the governing body, which is called the Thunderhead, has created a group of people called the Scythe who go out and basically choose who has to die in order to maintain population and resources on the planet Earth. I want to get more into sci-fi this year. I feel like I had so many good sci-fi recommendations, but it's still a genre that I'm a little bit afraid of. I read another book by Neil Shusterman called Everlost. I got this as part of a blind date with a book display, and I never ended up picking up the rest of the series, but I do think about this book really frequently, and I do think I want to go back to that this year. I really like his writing. It was humorous and light, but still tackles really heavy emotions. The characters were really compelling. I had a lot of fun with it, and he's written a whole lot of stuff, so I'm excited to dive into his books. This next one's kind of a doozy. I'm not like super into monster romances. It's not a genre that I generally reach for, but I have seen so many people who have loved Ice Planet Barbarians. I also just learned that it is 21 books long, and that's not counting novellas and spin-offs. So we're gonna start it this year. We may not finish it. Ice Planet Barbarians is a series of books following a group of really hot women who end up stranded on an ice-covered planet and meet up with a whole bunch of aliens who are really excited about a group of really hot women that ended up stranded on their planet. That's it. I can't remember if it was this year or last year, but I saw another creator on here that I really enjoy, Cindy. She read the whole series and she seemed to have a really good time with it. So I trust her thoughts, I trust her recommendations, and I will also be embarking on this journey. Heavenly Tyrant. I have been waiting for this book. I'm not even joking. For all of 2024. Iron Widow was one of the first books that I read in 2024. It was my first sci-fi book of the year. It was my first 5-star read of the year. And this was another one whose release was delayed for a bit, but it did come out in December. I read Iron Widow digitally, so I will also be reading Heavenly Tyrant digitally, although the covers for both books are absolutely stunning. Iron Widow and Heavenly Tyrant are a blend of real-life Chinese history, a little bit of mythology, and Gundams, which, if you're unfamiliar, they're basically like Transformers, only way larger, and they are piloted by people. And the only reason I know that is because of my husband. He likes to build model robots, and the model robots that he builds are based on the Gundam series. I don't entirely understand it. It started off as either a show, like an anime, or a movie, I'm not sure which, and I think it started in the 80s or 90s. Iron Widow as a book was absolutely gripping. I was so devastated when the release date was pushed back. So I'm very excited to read this sequel in 2025. And also, Shirin Zhao is another author on TikTok who's just absolutely hilarious. I think that their TikToks are phenomenal. Another author you should follow on TikTok. The Prison Healer series by Lynette Noni is a series that was recommended to me by some friends on Booksta, and when I saw these covers, I couldn't resist. So this series follows Kiva, who is the prison healer. She's been tasked with keeping the terminally ill rebel queen alive for long enough to go through a series of trials. If the queen succeeds, then Kiva and the queen will be rewarded with their freedom. I'm a sucker for any kind of fantasy series, and honestly, this book doesn't look too long, so I feel like I'm gonna breeze right through it, and I'm excited for this one. I really enjoy mythology retellings, and these two books have been at the top of my list for a long time now. I just haven't gotten around to them. But can we talk about this? This is a Rainbow Crate exclusive dust jacket, and I got an arc of Not for the Faint of Heart. I was not sent this from like a publisher. I got these in a book box exchange run on Instagram. I think I got these in either October or November. Not only was like I just excited for the books, but the fact that the person that I was exchanging with went out of their way. This one is from like a box, like a subscription box. I don't know if it was their copy, they wanted to pass along the love. I don't know where they got this arc from, but I'm so excited. Gwen and Art Are Not in Love is a queer medieval fiction inspired by King Arthur. Not for the Faint of Heart is inspired by Robin Hood. Just based on the summaries of this book, I'm already 100% invested. Cowboy romance is another genre that I haven't really been exploring, but it's very much having a moment on Book Talk and Bookstagram. This is a series that I've seen very popularized. I am usually hit or miss on interconnected standalone series. They just rely so heavily on the first couple in the series, and I feel like everything ends up being based around that couple. I feel like the rest of the books tend to fall behind in comparison to that first book. And that's been my frustration with a lot of interconnected standalone series. Rebel Blue Ranch has been very highly recommended as far as cowboy romances go, so I'm hoping it lives up to the hype. This is another book that I've seen really taking over Book Talk, even just in the last couple of months. As a dark academia fantasy girly, I'm already ready for it. It's focused on a woman in a magical school who is working to become the very first female high mage. She's got the odds stacked against her from the beginning, and her colleagues are very quick to let her know that she is not welcome. And so I've been seeing this very much publicized as like the best female rage that we can get. And I love that. I support women's rights, but I also support women's wrong. This book was recommended to me so frequently, especially in comparison to other books with magic, dark academia, and strong female leads, such as The Legend-Born Cycle, such as Spark of the Everflame. I've been fawning over this cover and the sprayed edges. I love a really intricate, really detailed sprayed edge, but if you can nail a solid colored sprayed edge, stunning, beautiful. Sign me up. I am a simple woman. If I see anything being compared to The Princess Bride, I'm sold. This is supposed to be a comedic take on like a high fantasy chosen one kind of adventure. I'm actually a little nervous about this one. It hasn't been reviewed super favorably. It's sitting at like a 3.5, 3.6. Most people have been saying that it's just very long and drawn out, and that is almost always my number one complaint with books. So I'm hoping that the humor wins out. The Inheritance series is another series from my youth that somehow did not read the whole thing. I read the first two books when I was like maybe 10, 12 years old. I think the third book was not out yet. Then it became 4 books, and I just never ended up completing the series when I was a kid. This past year in 2024, I didn't binge read series, and I feel like that was to my detriment. So the Inheritance series follows Aragon and his dragon Saphira. They are tasked with saving the world as the very last dragon rider. It's very Tolkien-esque. It's got a lot of focus on world building, adventure, a lot of high fantasy elements. There's elves, there's dragons, there's epic battles, there's magic. Everything that I loved as a kid and that I still love as an adult. I got back into this series because there was a Murtaugh-centric prequel book that was recently published. Before I reread the series, all I remember was the emotional impact of Murtaugh as a character. And so I'm really excited to finish this series so that I can read his backstory. I want to know what's going on with that boy. I have always been a Lord of the Rings fan. I used to watch the movies all the time as a kid. I have a tattoo in Elvish. I love this series. This series has been such a huge part of my life since I was probably about 8 years old. My husband got me these beautiful special editions for Christmas. Again, a super solid sprayed edge. Love it. I also have this really cool illustrated edition of The Hobbit. This is a sprayed edge that I don't think I've seen anybody else do anything like. But it's got these really beautiful illustrations. There's one of Smaug on his hoard that I absolutely adore. Because they are so beautiful, I don't want to ruin them. So I will probably be reading these digitally. These are the most beautiful book trophies that I could ever ask for. I read Firekeeper's Daughter in November of this year, and I really loved the mystery thriller aspect of it. So when I saw that there was a sequel, I knew I had to put it on my list for 2025. Firekeeper's Daughter follows a young Ojibwe woman named Donis who gets caught up in a murder and drug investigation while also working to understand her identity and her place in her tribe and in her family. Warrior Girl Unearthed is the sequel to Firekeeper's Daughter, and it follows one of Donis's little cousins that we meet in Firekeeper's Daughter. I really enjoyed Angeline Boulley's writing. I thought it was so well researched and presented, and I hope I enjoy Warrior Girl Unearthed as much as I enjoyed Firekeeper's Daughter. Full transparency, I bought this book because the title made me laugh. Those are the vibes that I'm hoping for. I love dragons. I love humorous books. I don't know if this book is actually humorous. I feel like with the title, I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons, like, I'm sorry. I'm afraid you've got dragons. How could it not be at least a little bit funny? I don't know. This feels like it's gonna be just like a fun little fantasy romp. I know absolutely nothing about it, and I feel like that's the energy that I have to go into with this book and just kind of see what happens. So in Anatomy, we follow Hazel, who is trying to become a surgeon, but she is getting kicked out of lectures because she is a woman. This takes place in, I believe, 1800 Scotland? 1817 Scotland. She teams up with Jack, who is a resurrection man, which to the best of my research is just a nice way of saying that he is a grave robber. She teams up with Jack in order to study bodies and continue her education. I didn't see a lot of people talking about this book, but the people who did talk about it really, really enjoyed it. So it seems like the people who have read this book really, really like it, and I hope to be a part of that. Liana De La Rosa is a new auto-buy author for me. I discovered her books over the summer with her first book in this series, Anna Maria and the Fox. I love the way that Liana De La Rosa handles interconnected series. Like I said before, I don't like how some series heavily rely on the first couple. I feel like that's not going to be the case here. Just by reading the first book, I know that's a lot to put on the shoulders of this series, but I feel very confident. The three Luna sisters, Anna Maria, Isabel, and Gabriella, have fled French-occupied Mexico to England. Again, this is another one that takes place in Victorian. I don't believe it's actually Victorian. I believe this is like 1830s. Oh, 1860s. I was way off. Okay, so I don't even think this is Victorian anymore. Well, actually, I'm gonna look it up. First book follows the oldest daughter, Anna Maria. The second book follows Isabel. The third book follows Gabriella, and I believe that is being released in August. When I was reading Anna Maria and the Fox, I loved that the other sisters were off doing their own things. They were setting up their own stories. Even though this book was only about Anna Maria and Gideon, I knew what was happening in Isabel's life. I knew what was happening in Gabriella's life. There were conversations that were happening between the sisters and who we know are going to be their eventual love interests, but we didn't get to see those conversations happen in Anna Maria's book. And I love that because it makes me want to read the other books. So for example, there's a scene in Anna Maria and the Fox. They meet Gideon, who is Anna Maria's love interest, and Captain Dawson, who we've already kind of seen is going to be the love interest for Isabel. And Isabel says to Anna Maria, I don't want to associate with Captain Dawson. I think he's bad news. And Anna Maria's like, what do you mean? Isabel says, I overheard a conversation that made me really wary of him. I don't trust him. We didn't see this happen in Anna Maria's book, but I know if I go read Isabella and the Rogue, I'm gonna see that conversation, and that makes me want to read the book. I'm already invested in these characters, even though I haven't read their books yet. And I think that's the way we need to do interconnected standalones. Each sister feels important, and each sister feels like their own person and not just a background character for the first book in the series. Take notes. This is how you do an interconnected standalone. Thank you. This was a book that I bought at some point in 2024, and I just kept pushing it off because I wasn't in the mood for a World War II historical fiction. But then I saw an advertisement for a movie on Netflix called The 6888 about a battalion of Black women in the army who were sent overseas during World War II to sort through and deliver all of this backlogged mail. And I was like, this sounds familiar. So I think it's the same story, and I will definitely be reading the book and watching the movie, but I want to read the book first. The books are always better than the movies. I started reading memoirs in 2024 after never reading memoirs. I found this book on one of those based on a true story displays at the Barnes & Noble, and I picked it up because I was in a production of the musical version of Catch Me If You Can, which is the story of Frank Abagnale. I did that in college. It's also been made into a movie. I haven't seen the movie. It was one of my favorite theatrical productions that I've ever been in. I love the music. It has a special place in my heart. I definitely did not branch out a lot into the memoir genre. I think I only read maybe 4 memoirs in 2024, but I was mostly sticking with names and stories that I was already kind of familiar with. Catch Me If You Can definitely falls into that category, but I'm hoping that if I enjoy it, it gives me the confidence to read more memoirs that I'm not already familiar with. Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom have been so highly praised on bookish social media. So of course, as a fantasy novel that people seem to like, it's found its way onto my bookshelf. This has been on my TBR for longer than I'd like to admit. I read the first book of the Shadow and Bone series, and I also watched a couple of episodes of the Netflix series, but I didn't end up finishing either of them. And so I've been hesitant to read Six of Crows because I was worried that I wouldn't understand the world, how the magic system works, or who these people are, how the world is laid out, all of those things. So that's the reason why I think I keep putting it off. This was a book club pick for November, and I was like, perfect, great, I'm gonna read it. And then I didn't get around to reading it. So it's back on the TBR. People love the found family aspect of Six of Crows, and they also really like the heist. Those are things that I do enjoy. So I'm hoping that once I get the confidence to read this book, that I'm gonna like it as much as everyone else seems to like it. Those are all of my most anticipated reads for 2025. I will be making another book blanket this year. That video should be out next week. I'm also hoping that the mood reader in me will always find something that she wants to read at that moment in time, and hopefully move some of these from the TBR pile to the read pile by the end of 2025. My plan for this channel is to upload a long form video once a week, most likely Saturday or Sunday, and to bring over some of my short form content that I've already made on TikTok and Instagram, and just be uploading those on a more regular basis. I do try to post on TikTok and Instagram between 2 and 3 times a day, and I'd love to have y'all along for the ride. So until next time, I hope you have a great day. I hope you get to do something that you love, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.